everyone. Welcome to Hollywood Mindset TV. Today, I am so excited to have a very special guest, Mr. Robert Galinsky. He's been quoted in the New York Times, on MSNBC, like anywhere you can possibly imagine. This man has been quoted. He's also a playwright. He is an acting coach. He does everything. So Robert Galinsky, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. Hollywood Mindset TV.
So excited to have you. So before we get started, I kind of gave a brief introduction of who you are, but who is Robert Galinsky in your own words?
I'd say Robert Galinsky is a activist, an artist, and a connector. My life, I really enjoy connecting people that I meet, that I think should know each other, that can help each other. And there's something in my brain that when I meet somebody, the first thing that happens is I'm thinking, oh wow, they should know so and so because they could improve their lives and the world together. So that's the key. And then I'm almost everything I do comes out of theatrics or the stage and performing. And I feel like that's another area of my life that has just blossomed, and I run with it, and I like it when people are able to express themselves clearly and specifically and touch other people's hearts. And that's where I'm coming from.
That's awesome. You are quite the connector. When I think about all of the people that you've connected VIPIGNITE with, let alone just all the people that you know, my mind is completely blown. So do you have some kind of formula to networking? Because it seems like every time I hear your name, like, oh, well, Galinsky's talking to this person, and Galinsky's talking to that person. So can you go into your formula a little bit?
Well, it's more, I'd say formula is a cool word. I think it's also, it's from the heart, and then it's about being professional. It's about having etiquette. It's about being aware of people's time and energy. And to me, it's all connected. It's all about being economical with messaging. And when I write poetry, so when I write poetry, and I've learned from some great poets, it's the economy of language. How much can you fit into a line that is beautiful, comfortable, but also has so much meaning? And I feel like that's similar with our interactions. How do you get the most out of a short interaction or a long interaction and want the person to come back for more? And it's all got to be the A word, authentic, but it's all got to be real. And I feel like where that comes from is caring for other people's time. And I had great teachers that taught me about respecting your audience. And when I do a show or I do an event, and likewise, if I go meet somebody for coffee, for a meeting or a conversation, I'm always there thinking about they took the time out. They showed up on time. They did everything they needed to do to get here. And so our time that we sit together, or the time that they're in the audience watching a show, is very valuable for them. And I got to respect that.
Yeah.
And that's part of being a good connector, is respecting other people's time and effort that it took them to focus themselves to come to meet you.
Yeah, time is our only non-renewable resource. We can get more money, we can improve our health, but time is something that you can never get back. After you spend it with someone, you can't get that back. So I love that you respect people's time like that, because I think that's something that people really need to understand also. But I want you to dive a little bit deeper into the networking, because everything you said is amazing, but it's also natural to you. Yeah. There are some people who are like, okay, well, that sounds amazing, but like, how do I put that into action? So can you can you kind of go a little bit deeper into that for me?
Yeah, I'll do a step by step, but I'm kind of riffing it.
It's okay.
I'll use a VIP as an example. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, great. So I know that VIP has set up a platform for people who are usually people who are fairly new to the industry that want to get in. Yeah. And I know that the platform that VIP has set up is great. The structure that you guys created is incredible. You get to meet people. You're not just standing there, wide-eyed looking at a movie star from a distance. You're actually able to talk to that person. So when I see that you guys were doing an event, I always am thinking, okay, who can I mean, here's step number one of the formula. How can I add value to whatever I'm involved in? How do I add value? And sometimes it's me showing up and doing what I do for Mike and Allie and you. And sometimes it's me saying, we need this person. We need to bring in Stephen Henderson, who we're yet to get because he's been so busy. But he's a brilliant actor. His face is known by so many, and he's a warm, wonderful person. And so I think step two is, are you bringing, step one, value, but then two is warmth and love. Because there are certain people that will show up for the paycheck. There will certain people that will phone in their effort. And those are the people that I don't connect with other people. Yeah. So I think, heart is a huge part of it. The people that I like to connect with one another have to have some passion inside of themselves, something burning that is a benefit to the world, and not just to themselves or the people just around them, but to the world at large. So I think value, heart, and then etiquette or professionalism. It's knowing, and if you don't know, sometimes you got to be taught. Some people are born knowing how to finesse conversations and introductions and whatnot. And some people, you need to be trained on that. And part of that training is etiquette. It's like treating people respectfully, again, valuing their time, and saying, all right, I'm dying to have VIP meet so-and-so, but is this the right time to do it? Is this the right place and time? So again, going back to being economical with people's energies and times, so that everybody feels they got something out of it. And I think that's the most important part of connecting. And I've had times where I've connected people and nothing's happened, but that's okay. They took the time to find out what there was potential for. And then I've had times where I thought people would hit it off professionally, but no, they hit it off personally, and they end up being really good friends. Mm-hmm. So you got to trust your instincts and know that you're bringing some practical value to the connection. You're bringing some heart and some passion to that connection. And then you're making sure that you're fair and clear with the time that you're spending and that you're asking of people.
Now, you said something you just said a couple minutes ago was that it's some people can be taught this and some people it just comes naturally. Is this something that comes naturally to you, or is this something that you've been taught over the years, or something that a skill that you've grown over the years?
It's something that I think is natural and has grown over the years as I've embraced it and realized it. Probably about 15, 20 years ago, I realized, wait, people keep saying you connect people, and you should meet Galinsky because he'll introduce you to so-and-so. And so at first it was just kind of like, I guess it's part of my behavior. And then I realized, wait a minute, there's a value to be gotten out of being a connector. There is, whether it's monetary or it's just relationships, there's a value in that. And so I definitely honed it, and I definitely indulge in it. And I'm careful about who I'm making a match with or not, because as you guys know, sometimes you only get one shot to pitch your idea. You get one shot to make an impression. And that goes the same with when connecting people. I have friends that are in really high places that have said to me, if you tell me to talk to the guy, I will. And that respect is, I love that sense of respect that these friends of mine, these colleagues of mine have for, I'm not going to waste their time.
Yeah. Yeah, you've definitely been a good friend to VIPIGNITE. I think we owe so many of our speakers. I couldn't even count them on one. I couldn't even count them all.
And I owe you back, because again, there's two sides to the equation on connecting. If we go back to a formula, there is, what are you bringing to somebody? And then who are you, who's that other point of contact? So I don't walk just anybody into VIP. I've had some people that I thought would be pretty cool at a VIP event, but weren't ready to take on the responsibility of what they need to do. And I've had people that I've wished would come, and have been able to land them that they've come, because I know that they're going to bring so much value and so much greatness to the people in the room.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about so you were born and raised in New York, in the New York area. And now you're currently sitting in LA and you go
Yep.
back and forth. So how did you take the skills and the connections that you made in New York and translate them to LA? Or did you have to start from scratch when you went to LA and rebuild everything?
A little of both, actually. I came to LA, and because I'd been in New York for a while, past 30 years, I made a lot of great relationships there, and some of those people have moved out to LA. So fortunately for me, when I got out here, there was a number of people that I had already had good experiences with, and I had already had working relationships or personal relationships with, so that I could reconnect with them out here. And they've all been gracious and helpful and amazing in that way. That then, 6 degrees of separation, that then spread. So I was funny because I did my show, The Bench, at a place called the Norwood Club in New York. A woman named Cedering Fox came to the show because she recognized Shabaka's name as a presenter. She came to the show, she fell in love with it, and she said, I want to do it in LA. I want to put you up for a night. And I said, great. So came to LA, and we did it in LA. And then one of her friends, Barbara Ligety, who's a publicist and a producer, rather, she was there. And so, you know Robert? Oh, and then, oh, you know Joe Trentacosta, who's still back in New York, another publicist. Oh, I love Joe. And so then we hit it off, and it just spreads. It just spreads. And if your karma is good, and if your intentions are good, and your goal is to make the world a better place, whether you're an accountant or a theater person, or you build tables, it doesn't matter. If the intention behind that is to make our world better in any facet that you possibly can help contribute with, then people recognize that, and that like energy connects with each other. So then Barbara and I got connected. And now Barbara and I, so I then went to a climate change event, and there was Barbara, and she turned around, she goes, oh my God, you're everywhere. I'm like, so are you, you know? And then the people who threw the event were like, how do you guys know each other? So it just starts to multiply.
Yeah. So you glossed over this. Can you tell us a little bit about Shabaka? You're like, oh yeah, Shabaka. Tell my audience who he is in case they don't know who he is.
Barry Shabaka Henley is one of the United States' greatest actors, actually. He's a character actor, but he's also, beyond that, he's a lead. When he gets on stage, his presence is amazing. And ages ago, he was running in the play Jitney in Union Square in Manhattan. And a friend of mine was dating his brother and said, you got to meet this guy. He's a wonderful guy. So I went and saw the play, and I met him. Again, we clicked immediately. And we began to hang out a little bit here and there. And I would invite, when he was in town to do shows, because he's based in LA, I would invite him to parties, and we'd hang out. And we became really good friends. And then he also became a mentor of mine, because he's such a brilliant actor, and he's been working for 30 years steadily. So we became really good friends. He mentored me in some ways. And when I went to put up my show, speaking of connecting, I was like, I'm going to do a solo theater piece. And I know if I can attach a couple of names to this, it will open a few more doorways for me. So I asked him, would you mind being a presenter? He said, what's a presenter? I said, well, it's like a producer without having to put any money into it. And so he said, great, I'm in. I believe in you. He watched the piece. He said, I love it. I believe in you. I believe in what it says. So he put his name on it. And again, that did open a lot of doors. People were like, how the hell did you get Shabaka Henley connected with what you're doing? And I'm like, well, we're friends, first of all, but no one knows that. You know, that's personal and private.
Yeah.
And a friendship spilled into professional, and that's when the world gets to know who you're connected with.
Yeah. Well, in case anyone was wondering who the Shabaka Henley is, this is a picture of Allie with Shabaka. She's always good with showing me the photos. She's like,
wait,
hold on, here's a photo.
Is that Lady Gaga with him?
I know, right? Is that Lady Gaga or is that Alicia Quebec? We don't know. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about The Bench. I know that you've had a lot of amazing readings, and you have a lot of backers with that. So like J.O. Saunders is one of your backers for that. Chris Noth. Can you talk a little bit about those connections as well and explain who they are?
Sure. So if you don't have a friend like Shabaka Henley that you can ask, a friend that's, you know, in the business and successful and respected, and you don't have that friend. Well, I did. So I asked him.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but if you don't, but you know somebody who knows somebody, I got to that place where I was like, I'm just going to ask. There's no harm in asking. So a friend of mine who's one of the associate producers of the bench, Shannon Hamm, she's a brilliant actress and producer. She was doing work on The Good Wife and had befriended Chris. And I knew Chris was a New York actor, and I knew he was into theater and was an excellent actor and can appreciate somebody walking the boards. And so I said, can you see if he'll take a phone call from me about being a presenter with Shabaka? And she said, sure. So I called him up and I told him what I was doing. I told him I'm emerging, I'm struggling and whatnot as a theater artist. Would you do a solid for another New York actor? He said, I would if I got to see the piece. So he watched the piece and he loved it. He felt like it was incredible. And then there was a little bit of delay because he doesn't know me. And he's like, well, why am I doing a favor for a guy I really don't know? I know Shannon, we're close, we're friends, but, and excuse me, by the way, I haven't told many of these stories publicly. So this is kind of a nice premiere here on Hollywood Mindset TV. And I'm only doing it because this is why people are watching. Take from what I'm telling you, not just a story, but extract from it how you can do the same thing in your life, how you can make an ask of somebody that's not absurd. And if it is absurd, you can frame it in a way that it's doable. Yeah. So he hitched just for a second. And I said, well, I'm working with J.O. Sanders, and I'll tell that story in a second, but Jay is going to direct it. And as soon as I said Jay was going to direct it, Shabaka is going to present it, Chris said, all right, I'm in. So there's part of that formula again is like, who are you bringing into the mix with each other? Yeah. I knew all three guys are really about stage acting, very successful in TV and film, but they're also very much in love with the stage. And if they can support somebody else who's got something to say on the stage that they believe in, then they will. So that's how those three came together. Jay is just a friend because our sons went to school together. And we'd see each other after school in the playground and whatnot. And we both, again, love theater. So we just hit it off back then. And again, I knew if I can get somebody of Jay's caliber in the mix, and when I say caliber, I mean integrity. There's very few people like J.O. Sanders and his integrity to storytelling and the truth at all costs. And again, also the being economical with people's time, being efficient with people's time. You showed up, you battled the rain, you left work early, you got a babysitter, whatever it is. Maybe you didn't do all those hard things. You went to happy hour and then came to see the show. Point is, you came and took time out of your life to come see this event. We're going to make sure that we can do everything we can to make it worth your time. And Jay is of that ethos. So I said, Jay, do you want to direct it? And he said, I've never directed anything in New York yet. He watched it and said, yeah, I'm down, I'm in. So that's how that all came together. Just asking, dreaming big. There were times where I was afraid to step forward and ask. And then I said, you know what, you got to step into that, because all of the greatest breakthroughs that ever have happened in this world are when people walk toward what they're afraid of. Yeah.
Pain is a great catalyst to change. So I know my life is much richer for you leaning into that. So thank you on behalf of myself and all of VIPIGNITE and everyone watching this, honestly. So with all of the networking you do and with your vast connections, what is the key to staying in contact with everyone? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's a little instinct. It's like, you got to read a person. If a person is really warm and fuzzy and you got to start to read a person's habits and how they like to operate. So if you find somebody that's warm and fuzzy, you can be warm and fuzzy back. If you find somebody that's a little crisp and more standoffish, then you don't dive in with your heart on your sleeve. You mirror a little bit. It's a little bit like being a chameleon. At the beginning, you've got to kind of mirror what they do and how they do what they do, and then you assimilate into their world. Repeat the question one more time, because I went off.
No, the question I asked is, with your vast network of people, how do you manage staying connected to everyone?
Okay. So then now once you know, you have a sense of how this person operates, and let's be specific because you want people to learn here. It's like, if you know somebody is a texter, then all right, then that's your main modus of communication. If you know you can get a really great communication out of somebody through texting, and then you start calling them, but you know that it was texting that was working, you're not doing it right. So you've got to adapt yourself to whoever you're dealing with. Some people love email, some people love just FaceTime. And if that's the case, then okay, you start to categorize. I know that so-and-so operates in this particular manner, so-and-so in this manner. You don't push your style on them completely, because your style might not mesh. And especially at the beginning. At the beginning, you want to figure out a way that you're in their comfort zone of being able to talk to you and reach out to you and accept your phone calls or your texts. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge, huge part of it, being a chameleon.
Sounds like a very delicate dance is what you're doing with people.
It really is. And that's, and I've seen at VIP is so many people are so excited and so enthused that sometimes gets in the way of that delicate balance. And it's admirable and cute that somebody is really enthused to meet so-and-so, but take a breath, take a moment and step back and say, okay, what's my best approach with that person? And even observe how other people interact. I've watched so many people interact with folks that I'd like to interact with, and you can see people fail. And if you see how they fail, you don't do what they did.
Yeah. Can you dive a little bit deeper into that? Because we're always telling people that they need to follow up. So can you dive a little bit deeper about, like, if a lot of people, I'm sure, follow up with you because you're Robert Galinsky, you're the MC, you're one of the coaches. Can you maybe dive in a little bit deeper into, like, the proper way for them to communicate with someone like yourself?
Sure. So it's case by case, right? Everybody has their own, their own way of enjoying communicating with others. For me, you can write that again, another piece of the formula. If somebody says, call me Tuesday, or somebody says, email me next week, or somebody says, send me a text, that's exactly what you do. You listen, you have to listen clearly to how they're talking and how they want to maintain a relationship with you. Yeah. So instead of, somebody says to you, you meet somebody at a VIP event and they say, oh, really, you do music? Oh, that's great. Well, send me a song. Okay. How would you like it? Email. Just email me a song. Okay, great. So now the person goes home, they email, they get on Facebook, they get on LinkedIn, they get on Instagram, they friend that person, they send it to them on all those platforms. Somehow they got their phone number, they text it to them, they email it to them. And the person that wanted to hear the song is like, whoa, all I said was email me the song. And now I'm getting bombarded from all these different angles. So to me, that's like, this person's not listening. You've got to be a really good listener. Sam Shepard, the awesome playwright, used to just sit at a bar in Chicago and just listen for hours and hours. And I know this because a friend of mine, an older cat, used to hang out at that bar. And he said, I watched Sam Shepard be silent for hours when he was a young man, just taking notes and listening. So listening and really listening, not like, okay, and then going home and doing it the way I want to. Oh, I think he'd like this. Or they say, send me X, Y, and Z, and you send them A through Z. Yeah. Right? Now they don't even want to look at X, Y, and Z because you've bombarded them with too much information. Yeah. So specific follow-up is, ask the person, how do you want me to, what's the best way for me to stay in contact with you? And the person's going to tell you their preferred mode. And then you follow that. And then maybe it blossoms to other areas where you get to connect with that person. So I think that's the big mistake that a lot of people make. And sometimes it's because they're ignorant and they won't learn. And then sometimes it's just because we're so overwhelmed with excitement that we met so-and-so and we had the opportunity to continue a conversation with so-and-so. And we let our enthusiasm get in the way of our professionalism.
Yeah, that's one of the best tips that I've had on Hollywood Mindset TV, honestly, because so many times people do that. Like, even with me, like with the way I work with the company, all of a sudden I'm getting friend requests from people I've never met because they saw me on a Facebook Live, and I'm like, who are you? So you definitely have to make sure that you're tempering the way that you're communicating
Exactly.
with people.
Yeah, you have
or
to.
at least introduce yourself. Don't send a friend request. Say, hey, So I love that pointer that you just gave there. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
So the other night I was watching Power, and it occurred to me that I actually know 50 Cent's acting coach. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because we talk about that. Oh yeah, 50 Cent's acting coach is one of the people that works with our company. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Again, that's one of those things about being a professional in the industry, and sometimes you make opportunities, and sometimes opportunities just happen because you're right there. I am friendly with a number of casting directors in New York, and one of them called me up and said, hey, do you know somebody named P. Diddy? And I was like, well, I mean, everyone knows P. Diddy, yeah. She goes, well, he's going to be auditioning for a movie with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And we've got your headshot here, and you kind of resemble De Niro a little bit. We thought it would be cool to have you come in and read some lines with him for his audition with the director. I was like, okay, great, let's do it. Calls me up a day later and says, oh, I was wrong. It's somebody else named 50 Cent. I'm like, okay, great, even better. So let's extract the lesson here, one part of the lesson, which is my headshot is sitting in somebody's desk somewhere, in a folder, on a wall or whatever, and she gets the call. We need a sort of a De Niro-ish kind of looking guy. Ding, Robert Galinsky. He's right there. Look at that. So you have to know that the relationships that you're making, this that's in front of you, a film, a commercial, a short play, they're not one-offs. You're going to know, you're going to see the end. Again, always going back to what you guys do a great job in training your clients with, which is to the professionalism, the cover letter, the resume, all those simple things that just because they're simple, people kind of don't respect them and overlook them. You guys don't. And so she was like, not only was she like, this guy looks a little like De Niro, but somewhere in her mind, she was like, I can trust that he'll do this professionally. Yeah. So something about what I was doing in our past auditions let her know, okay, I can trust him. So I came in and I read with 50 and the director, and it was like 10 minutes. That was it, 10 minutes. But then when it was over, pulled me aside and said, yo, I really like what you were doing. Can you help me out a little more? You want to do, coach me a little bit for this audition? Because this was his first big audition for a film. And it was in a room with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. So even 50 Cent has got a sense of intimidation that he's dealing with as well.
Yeah.
So I said, great. So I gave him a good hourly rate, but I also boosted it because it needed to be respectable. And we booked some time and we did some rehearsing. And at one point during one of the rehearsals, we're in a private studio of his up on 30th Street. And the script is me swearing and screaming at him, calling him all kinds of names, the N-word. And I'm doing a good job of it, but I can feel like I'm kind of stepping through it. So I said, can I go to the bathroom for a sec? I checked out, went to the bathroom. I look in the mirror and I'm like, you are with 50 Cent. And you are supposed to do what he's paying you to do. You're supposed to deliver. You cannot be starstruck. Get your ass out there and deliver. So went back out there and we went at it again. And this time I went off. I don't use the N-word, but I let him know I'm going to use the N-word. And I went off on him. And we were in each other's face, improvising, screaming on each other. And within like 3 minutes, 5 of his guys bust into the studio. It was just he and I in the studio, but bust into the studio, ready to go. Like, what the hell's going on in there? And we both just looked at him. It was great. Because that 50 and I looked at him and just started cracking up. Like, no. It's the rehearsing. It's rehearsing. And then they left. And I said, you nailed it. That's what we need. There's no acting here. It's all about giving it the truth from your life, 50. You've been on the street. This guy's on the street. There's no acting here. Just tap into that raw emotion like we just did, and you're going to rock. So we pounded, and I left, and then he did the audition 2 days later, and he got the part. It was great.
That's awesome. Every time I watch Power now, I'm like, wow, If it weren't for Robert Galinsky working with 50 Cent, we may not even have power. How cool is that?
I think you're stretching a little, but
Well,
yeah.
I may be
So
stretching a little bit, but literally every time I see that show now, I'm like,
I appreciate it.
that's awesome.
We then went on to do some readings of a couple of scripts. I helped organize a few roundtables, and then I introduced him to another speaker that VIP had a while ago, Academy nominated songwriter Jamal Joseph. And those two hit it off as well. So again, another great connection. I'm like, who do I bring into this reading that 50 will respect me for, and also will bring value to the reading? Well, I know I'm very good friends with Jamal, and Jamal's a Black Panther. He was Tupac's godfather. That's the guy to bring in. You know,
Yeah.
He's got another truth that he can bring to what we were doing. And those two guys hit it off too.
That's amazing. Something I love about you, Galinsky, is that with everything that you do, there is always that human element where you always want to add value to the table and you always want to make the world better. With that being said, can we talk about your passion project, The Bench, a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. The Bench, I wrote it as a short play years ago. Then I rewrote it as a longer play. And then I saw the crow's feet around my eyes a number of years ago and thought, hey, you're flavored. You're old enough now because you never could have been a leading man. You're not pretty enough. And now you're flavored enough from life that the experiences are starting to come right out of you when you speak and when you perform. So I said, I want to do a piece that will showcase my flavors. And I was going to write a piece, and then I thought, I'm not in the mood to write something new. It's a very arduous process. What do I have in my archive? And I always loved The Bench and the characters, and it was written as a traditional dialogue play. And I thought this could also add something interesting to this, that it's not monologue, blackout. And I went for it. I was invited to do a one-night performance at Dixon Place, which is a brilliant theater in New York City, Lower Manhattan. And they said, look, submit a piece, and if we accept it, you'll get a night. We'll pay for everything, and you'll get a night in the theater. So I said, okay. So I before I did that, I rewrote some of the piece, tried some new things, added the backstories of the characters that are in the piece, and I said, if I'm going to do it tonight, and if I get a response from my audience that is worthy of continuing doing this, great. If I don't, then fine. I did a night and I took a shot. I did it. People dug it, really, really dug it. And from that point on, that was about 3.5 years ago. From that point on, I've been pushing it up the hill. And then we did 9 weeks off Broadway at the Cherry Lane Theater, which was mind blowing because Sam Shepard's had his work there, and so many other amazing artists have walked those boards. And then the idea was, I didn't have representation, so let's go to LA. So I went to LA last year and stayed here for about 1.5 years. Did a run here, started doing pop-up shows here, found out that homelessness in LA is far different than in New York and incredibly invasive. So there was an interest. I aligned myself with organizations and came up with another formula, which is I don't perform the piece now unless it's a benefit for a particular organization. And that's one, it's good for the organization because they get exposure and they get a chance to find new audiences. And it's also good for me because I get exposure to their audiences and their networks, and their networks care about the subject matter. So it was a win-win.
Awesome. Well, I want to be respectful of your time since that was an overarching theme of our whole show. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your tips on networking, your tips on connecting, and a lot of the stories that, like you said, you haven't shared publicly. I really appreciate that because I know that the whole reason for Hollywood Mindset TV is so that people can learn what mindset they need to be successful in Hollywood. And with someone like you being on board sharing these tips, anyone who watches the show, I hope that you re-listen to the show because there was so much that we gave you here. Make sure you go back and re-listen and take some notes, because if you apply the tips that Robert Galinsky has laid out for you here, the world is literally your oyster, because
Sure is.
it's all about connections. It's all about valuing time. But the thing that I took most from everything that you said is not only do you not only do you value other people's time, but you always want to make sure that you bring value to the table.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show, and we'll have to do this again sometime. I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Yeah, let's do part 2 sometime.
Part 2, yes, for sure. So thank you everyone so much for watching. Robert, thanks again for being on the show, and make sure that you keep tuning in because I have a lot of amazing guests lined up for Hollywood Mindset TV. Thank you so much.
Ciao, everybody.
Have a great day. Bye.